Hi, welcome to Ms. Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information will be U.S. Notes 1.14, African Americans in Reform. It includes information aligned with the second section of your study guide. Remember, you control the lecture, pause when you need, write down any questions you have, and rewatch if you need to. And always use your study guide to help you take the notes. Let's get started. One group that I mentioned as being a group on the margin, or disenfranchised group, was the African Americans. This group faced special hurdles and discrimination. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I've talked about how the post-Civil War era changed life for many African Americans. Many faced problems in the South and chose to move to northern cities thinking it would be better. Overall, African Americans faced prejudice regardless of where in the country they lived. In the South, Jim Crow laws were created. I mentioned these briefly in the earlier notes on people on the margin, but I want to talk about them again. These laws, designed to segregate and discriminate against blacks, were popular all across the South. Some were challenged in the courts, like in the case Plessy versus Ferguson. In Plessy versus Ferguson, Plessy, a 1/8 black man, tried to end the segregation law on trains. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, which declared that separate but equal facilities were legal. Yup, you heard that right. It was okay. That was in 1896. It didn't change until 1954. Other Jim Crow laws were designed around voting rights, such as grandfather clauses, literacy tests, and poll taxes. I talked about these in detail in Notes 1.8. So you can always go back to those if you need a refresher on what each was. Overall, these laws were designed to get around the requirements of the 15th Amendment and were very successful for a very long time. So due to those special circumstances that African Americans faced and the widespread discrimination, many white progressives did not try to work for more fair treatment of blacks. That meant an entire group of African American progressives rose up to do that. These progressives used 4 different approaches in changing African Americans' lives: protests, economic approaches, political approaches, and social approaches. Some blacks focused on gaining attention to the plight of African Americans through protests. They were trying to change social issues and help gain more public support. These were protests and had no real supporters in the white community and met with very limited success. The economic approach to helping African Americans was spearheaded by Booker T. Washington. He believed that African Americans should focus on gaining economic equality first, learning skills that translated into good-paying, skilled labor jobs. He thought that as blacks gained economic power, social and political equality would follow. Washington believed the key to economic success was vocational education, teaching work skills like farming, carpentry, building, and mechanics. This would make blacks invaluable workers and lead to higher wages and more fair treatment. The political approach, promoted by W.E.B. Du Bois, claimed that the only way to gain true equality was through political means. The main focus of Du Bois was on gaining voting rights. If African Americans could vote, they could change the individuals who held the power. If they had a say in who held power, those in power would work to help them and treat them better. Du Bois believed that they needed to fight for civil rights in order to gain equality. And finally, Marcus Garvey was the figurehead of the social equality approach. He believed African Americans could not ever gain equality in the U.S. due to their history here. He felt that the best option was to create their own new country, away from discrimination and prejudice. Garvey's plan, with support by other progressives, created a colony in Africa for former slaves to move to and to control. This colony was supported by white progressives, not because they were not racist, but because it actually moved the African Americans out of the U.S. This colony became Liberia, named for liberty, and is currently one of the most corrupt countries in Africa. So it was not exactly successful in the end. The four approaches to fix the problems of African Americans faced gained varying degrees of success and support. Most change, however, did not occur until the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s up through the 1970s. So this is the end of US Notes 1.14. I hope you learned something in the 5-minute lecture, and see you in class with any questions you have.